Welcome to the ASHTO GOTUG webinar, quarterly webinar for September 1st, 2021. I'm your host, Jeremy Aycock. We have a couple of presentations for you today that we'll get to in just a minute. Before we get started, I just wanted to go over who we are and what we do. ASHTO is a sponsored, GOTUG is a ASHTO sponsored organization. It began as a U-Plan initiative in September 2015. And a user group was created in 2016 as a response to the rapidly increasing pace for development of web-based GIS tools and applications. Our goals are to bring transportation professionals, GIS, and engineering disciplines together and to focus on the use of web-based GIS tools amongst these professionals, and also to provide a forum to exchange ideas about the future of web-based tools in transportation. The key people, I am the committee chair. I work for the North Carolina Department of Transportation as a web mobile GIS specialist. Our ASHTO liaison is Kyla Elzinga. She's the associate program manager for planning and data with ASHTO. Our steering committee consists of Nicole Hansen with the Idaho Transportation Department, Mark Sarmiento with the Federal Highway Administration, and Andrew Wimsat with the Texas Transportation Institute. We host webinars quarterly on the first Wednesday of March, June, September, and December. And these webinars provide a platform for DOTs and business partners to showcase web-based GIS tools that meet business needs. Some of examples that we host have been webinars based in project planning, infrastructure maintenance, asset management, environmental compliance, traffic operations, and project delivery. All of our past webinars are available on the GOTUG website, and you can see the URL there. And we also have some other links to technical resources, bulletins. With our distribution list, you can get bulletins and information suggesting webinar topics and feedback for GOTUG leadership. We also have some community resources to increase the visibility of GIS and geospatial data, and also technical resource group for all ASHTO members. We have an NPO GIS working group website. You do not need to be a member of the ANPO to participate in the group. And the list of the most recent webinars are listed at the bottom of that web page. We also have the FHWA GIS in Transportation program, which contains GIS-focused case study reports, peer exchange summary reports, email, news briefs, and webinars. Our next GOTUG webinar will be in December 1st, and if you have any ideas for presentations that you would like to share with us, please let us know. So we have two presentations today. Our first presentation will be on Geocortex and how it will integrate with ArcGIS products using their inline SLD viewer and GIS data reporting. And our second presentation will be with the Massachusetts DOT creating a roadmap for the future, linking GIS and STIP. So without further ado, I will introduce Peter McLaren and Aaron Oxley. Peter is a member of the Geocortex by Verde GIS team based in Toronto, servicing the Southeast US. Previous to working at Geocortex, he worked at Esri Canada for 15 years, supporting public sector clients of all types. Much earlier in his career, Peter worked at SEMCOG in Detroit with a heavy focus on using linear reference data to produce maps for the organization. With a degree in urban planning, a postgraduate diploma in GIS, and an MBA, Peter understands the business value of GIS and how important it is to connect systems together to truly realize efficiencies. With over 20 years experience working with the organization, large and small, Peter's goal is to always find win-win situations in every engagement. So without further ado, I will share the screen I'll give the presentation over to Peter.
Okay, perfect, thank you. Let me know if you can see my screen and everything.
Yep.
Oh, perfect. Okay, great. Well, thank you so much, and I'll just go into presentation mode. Good morning and good afternoon, depending on where you are. Thanks for having us here at your quarterly meeting. My name is Peter McLaren, and I'm joined by Aaron Oxley. Today we'll present how Geocortex inline STL viewer and our other technology integrates with Esri's ArcGIS platform. So Geocortex, our parent company, Vertigis North America, is the developer of Geocortex. We've got about 1,400 customers worldwide. We're an Esri Platinum business partner, and we offer web and mobile GIS frameworks and solutions that extend the ArcGIS platform. As you can see, we've got several release-readies, specialties, release-ready, ArcGIS Online, local state government, and marketplace. And of course, we've got customers in various verticals, but today we're focusing on transportation. So Geocortex has really evolved over the last few years from a standalone kitchen sink application, very feature rich, into a more modern approach where we've unbundled our technology into various apps based on the JavaScript 4.x and runtime. And we're offering viewer frameworks and capabilities that are meeting very specific needs. In this case, we're looking at inline today, but there's other allied technologies like workflow and reporting that help with inline. Geocortex also integrates with your business systems, whether it be SAP integration, Maximo integration, or any of the other integrations we have here. We've got several approaches to help you integrate your ArcGIS data and applications into these various applications. And of course, roads and highways. Where would we be without roads and highways? Roads and highways is a very important application, of course. Many people are using it. We've got several clients that are integrating roads and highways with the inline viewer to help end users get better access to their data. We did a Directions Magazine webinar a number of months ago, and in that we really focused on integration between Maximo and ArcGIS, as well as Laserfiche and ArcGIS. So if you'd like, please take a look at that webinar after this presentation. We'll make these slides available so you can take a look at that if that's of interest to you. Something very exciting that we've got now is Geocortex workflow activity packs that can be accessed through GitHub. They're free. They support deep integrations to Maximo, Laserfiche, CityWorks, Elements XS, as well as FME. It's connected to they connect to REST APIs, and there's a growing library of activities. So that's something definitely worth taking a look at if you do need some help with integration. Something new, which many of you may know if you're Geocortex users, is that we've moved to web-based designers to allow what you get, really ease of use as far as managing, whether you're moving from dev, stage test to production. So the web designers are quite exciting and a new component of Geocortex as of the last few years. So today we're going to really focus on the inline application here. It's part of our capabilities. As you see, there's several capabilities. There are some allied capabilities, for example, workflow and reporting, which kind of help round out inline and support it to make it extensible and support things beyond the core SLD kind of requirements. So inline is really our SLD viewer that works in a number of different Esri environments. It also, of course, works within Geocortex viewers. So it doesn't really matter what viewer is your favorite viewer, whether it be Web App Builder or you're exploring Experience Builder, inline will work in those applications, or those views, I should say. So workflow is really a critical part, kind of a secret sauce of Geocortex. That's where many things can be done. So it's something that we will show you in this presentation. And reporting, everybody needs reporting, and we will show several types of reporting through this presentation. I think Aaron's got the MassDOT road inventory queued up, and we'll show you what that looks like in a demonstration shortly. So a little bit more about Geocortex and our capabilities. All the capabilities, whether it's reporting, workflow, printing, access control, analytics, they will work within Web App Builder and Experience Builder. And inline is, of course, going to be working with Web App Builder or Experience Builder as required. All of our technology is built on ArcGIS Enterprise and inline. Sorry, ArcGIS Enterprise and ArcGIS Online. So we are very committed. We're exclusively on the Esri platform. So we will work within the Esri platform quite well. So where do we fit in? We see that Geocortex fits in somewhere between configurable apps and custom apps. What we do is through our technology and through configuration, we're able to reduce the amount of time and effort it takes to build apps and to get them out to your public and to your internal users. Geocortex for transportation. Through the inline application, we're really focused on supporting dynamic straight line diagrams and, of course, road reports based on Esri's roads and highways. Some proven solutions we have in transportation, linear referencing, of course, directly working with roads and highways or your data in other databases. Rights of way permitting, asset inspection, of course, straight line diagramming with inline, roadway reporting, culvert maintenance, federal highway and highways damage assessments, road closures and routing, and work order management. Here is a listing of our clients that are within the transportation vertical. You'll see several that you may be familiar with, maybe even one of them is yours. Several of them are using inline with roads and highways. Okay, so with that, we're going to focus on inline a bit here. Have you found yourself in need of a better way to visualize your linear data? You need to connect to SLDs or sheets for specific business processes. You need to make it easier for engineers to make decisions involving your linear assets. And you want a way to use your GIS as a system of record for your linear referencing processes. So with that, inline, we'll just do a few slides of inline and the allied technologies. Aaron, did you want to jump in and I'll push the slides forward for you?
Yeah, for sure, happy to. Actually, one thing that I just noticed you didn't have on your list of clients, it's a very new one, but Colorado is on that list now as well.
Oh, right, I forgot that one. Yeah, I did.
Colorado DOT just signed up. Yeah, and you had an example in there as well of one of the things that we did to prove the concept. But yeah, sorry, just kind of digressing there. I'm Aaron Oxley. Thank you, Peter, for the wonderful intro and segue. Yeah, we're getting into the more technical slides here now, kind of talking more about the actual functionality and the features of inline. So the number one thing is definitely getting that visualization of your linear assets with the dynamic straight line diagrams. So looking at it instead of just on a sheet, seeing your live data, being able to interact with that data, that's really the value of Geocortex Inline, the number one, at least in our opinion. Streamlining business processes, that has a lot to do with just bringing in Geocortex workflow. Peter called it the secret sauce. It can do anything. It's kind of like building blocks, like Lego. If whatever you need to do with it, chances are it can do it. We haven't been stumped yet. And gaining more insights in real time, it's again about that live data. Instead of having a straight line diagram that gets generated and is outdated, basically as soon as it gets generated, with inline, it's all dynamic and live. You refresh your browser and you've got a brand new visualization of your data and any changes that have happened since you first loaded that page. And next slide, please, Peter. And connecting to workflows, again, we'll be taking a look at that, how Geocortex workflow can add some functionality and help get more out of Geocortex Inline, integrating with web mapping applications that do other things as well. And yeah, we work with pods, UPDM, roads and highways. long story short, if you have linear data, it'll work in Geocortex inline. Like if you have M values, it's going to work. Sometimes we need to manipulate the data a bit, change the way that a key, like a related item, connects to the center lines. But yeah, we haven't run into any data yet that didn't work with Geocortex inline. Pods, UPDM, and roads and highways are certainly the easiest, but everything's worked as far as we've seen. And then integrating with your existing app. So we're going to take a look. That'll probably be the first thing that I show here is how Geocortex inline can work in different applications. Whether you've got Geocortex software or not, you can bring Geocortex inline into whatever web apps you currently have available for your end users. Now, on the workflow side of things, this is kind of digging into the different things that workflow can do, making GIS tools more accessible to users, building widgets for web app builder apps or experience builder applications. And often it just has to do with bringing the business systems together. Peter mentioned it. There's a ton of integrations we've made available. We've got activity packs available for people who are like developing with safe software FME processes. There's a lot of cool things that the more hardcore developer types have been able to do with this stuff. Really at its core though, it's getting your end users more functionality, easier functionality, making them more efficient, making them more successful, just the entire experience of having people who might not be GIS people or even people who are advanced GIS people, just putting more power in their hands and putting the right amount of power in their hands too. I think we've got a couple slides on the functionality of workflow. Yeah, so key thing for a lot of people is just reducing that development time by using a configuration drag and drop flowchart kind of framework. You don't need to write code. You don't need to hire developers. You don't need to maintain things. When the ArcGIS API for JavaScript gets updated, we take care of everything on our end so that just your configuration works. You drag and drop things and all the code in the background, it's Geocortex workflow doing that work. Modeling business processes, again, I just mentioned flowcharts. It's a really simple way to visualize, and it's self-documenting too. You look at it and you can follow it step by step, what's happening. Gather user input, display a form to the user, get data from an SQL database. It's all very self-explanatory and visual when you're configuring the workflows. And I've mentioned it more than once now, automating end user experience. That's really what it's all about, giving your users simpler ways to do things, more obvious ways to find the data that they're looking for, whether it's filtering or querying or pulling in data from other systems. Workflow really makes it easy for your users to get their hands on the data. And integrating with business systems, again, same sort of stuff, presenting with the dynamic forms. I've already talked about a lot of this. And then the part of 3x to 4x actually is a pretty important thing. I mentioned that we keep up with the ArcGIS API for JavaScript, including 4x. So you don't need to worry about rewriting anything when everything goes to the 4x API. Hosted widgets, super cool thing. I don't want to steal your thunder, Peter. Do you want to talk about this?
Well, yeah, hosted widgets is something brand new that we've that Geocortex has worked with Esri to bring to the marketplace. We're initially focused on internal apps, and we'll extend that to external apps in 2022. But on the technical side, it's a new way of doing or extending Geocortex to work directly with ArcGIS Online with Web App Builder. But Aaron, you may want to go into a bit more detail.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it opens up so many doors for people who don't have on-premises GIS. If you don't have ArcGIS server, and there's obviously a lot that comes with having that. For some smaller organizations that can't go through those hurdles or can't get budget for it, whatever the obstacles might be, with the hosted widgets, you just need an ArcGIS Online organization, and these things get added in so easily, and it really can give you the power of a full-on web GIS without having to go through all the headaches of setting up that infrastructure on premises. And reporting, hopefully we'll have enough time to dive into some reports, but yeah, Geocortex reporting, super cool, brings in data from all different types of sources and gives you really pixel perfect reports. You can design them right down literally to the pixel if you have things that are for regulatory purposes. I think hopefully I'll have time to show one of those. It's a web-based designer, super simple, drag and drop, just like Geocortex workflow. And a big part of it is putting your users with more power. Again, instead of having to go and tap someone in GIS on the shoulder and say, hey, can I get that report? You can give the power to your users. Lots of tools ready to go, drag and drop into your reports, whether it's different tables or bringing in attachments or related data, charts. There's a ton of stuff to visualize and make your data more meaningful, really, is what it's all about. Telling that story for people who aren't in GIS, giving them the information in a way that makes sense and pulling in the data from a lot of different sources. I think this is the last one, a kind of high-level overview of how Geocortex and ArcGIS work together. So really, when you're building apps nowadays, WebGIS apps, you're probably starting out with ArcGIS Online or Enterprise. You're going to have some creators creating web maps, web scenes, and that's like step one, right? They aren't really interactive, but at least you're giving your users the data. And then they're going to build apps in Web App Builder, and those apps will reference the web maps and the web scenes. That's what's going to support them. And then they can share out these apps to all sorts of different users, getting people engaging with the content. So it's really about further adoption is what Web App Builder did in the big picture of things. The same goes if they're using Geocortex viewers. So the Geocortex app items, they get saved into Portal as well. Everything that we do works very tightly with the ArcGIS ecosphere. And then those apps can be shared out to more users, extending the adoption of your GIS even more. You get a bigger audience looking at more apps, putting it power into your field workers' hands. Yeah, it's really, again, all about increasing the adoption. With Web App Builder apps, you get some people viewing your stuff. When you get into Geocortex apps, you can meet a lot more use cases, help more people. Now, this creator, they can use the printing, workflow, and reporting designers to author these items that support those apps, that add the workflow functionality, give them report, let them print out big, huge things, or really fine-grained 300 DPI kind of stuff. And then they save those back into the portal, and those can be added into the viewers, whatever you want to integrate them into. And again, once the items are made available, it's about even more people doing even more with WebGIS. So that's kind of the story of how Geocortex fits into the ArcGIS ecosphere. I keep saying that. I don't know if it's the right term, but it makes sense to me. Okay, demo time. This is where my favorite part. I'm going to share my screen here. This one here. Okay, so this is actually, when I start sharing my screen, I just know that my home internet, you can probably tell I'm at home, is not great when I'm broadcasting my camera and screen. So I'm going to turn my camera off, and hopefully that will get things moving nice and smoothly. So yeah, this is kind of a typical web mapping application. It's a Geocortex viewer, and we've got some tools available in a toolbar up here. Basic kind of GIS tools that you'd expect. We've got the I want to menu with some more functionality here. It's a fully functional GIS web mapping app, and we've just added Geocortex inline as a component down here. It's not only for Geocortex viewers though. We've talked a lot about that. Over here, I've got a web app builder application. This also has Geocortex inline added. It's the exact same over here. It's really easy just dropping a widget into my app in Web App Builder. And this has all the same functionality as it does in a Geocortex viewer. The rest of the viewer, it's just a viewer, but the inline is absolutely identical. Now, for people just getting started, we have like this little tour guide over here, but I'm going to talk about this, so no need for that. We've also got tips and tricks just to make sure that users know everything that they can do with the interface. But let's give it a try. So first we have this route selector here. When I select that one, as I go back and hover on the map, it's going to highlight the nearest roadway that is in the set of data. So in this case, I've just got the interstates. I thought it made sense for this venue. I'm going to pick Interstate 20 here, and I don't even need to click on it. I just click near it as long as that hovering is pulling me there. And it loads up the extent of this roadway across my map, and I can see the entire extent. I'm interested in downtown Atlanta for the sake of this demonstration. Just going to pick a little strip right down here. And so with those elastic tools, it makes it really easy to pick my range on the route. If I need something more specific though, so in that case, I picked from mile marker 54.29 to 56.95. If I need something really specific, I can just punch in values here. If I don't know where Interstate 20 is, I don't want to try and hover on my map to find it, I can just start punching 20 down here, and it will actually go out, query the REST endpoint, come back and suggest anything that starts with 20 or whatever other sort of names or IDs I might write. So as soon as I selected the route and the range, we get some data in the diagram. If I drag my mouse back and forth, we can see that the two are synchronized, the map and the inline below. We call these color-coded sections bands. They're used to group together related data. So in this case, this is the geography, the city and the county that are responsible for this strip of highway. All the attribute data from the functional class, it's an interstate, obviously. The types of barriers, the type of median, the surface used, the shoulder used. In this case, I've only picked a couple miles, so there's not a lot of change here. If I just pick a bigger stretch, we should see some differences in the data. We can see that we're going from Douglas to Cobb to Fulton County. We can see that there is no city responsible for this section, so it's just the DOT, no city, and then we're getting into Atlanta where they would have some financial responsibility for this strip of highway. So a lot of different data here. This is all about the assets and the attributes. You'll notice up here, view assets. I've also got a transportation view here. So if I switch over to this one, we're gonna get a whole new set of data over here. Here we're looking at average daily traffic, speed limits, and lanes, the number of lanes. So I can see like right over here, as I come into downtown Atlanta, the lanes go up to 5 to 6, and the speed limit drops down a little bit through this section where there's suburbia and a lot of on-ramps and off-ramps. And we can even see right here where it goes up to 6 lanes, there's also a lot more traffic. So that's, I mean, it makes sense, right? More traffic, more lanes, and it explains why these things are the way they are. It's just a really simple example of how inline can help me visualize my data so that I can draw some conclusions about what's going on here. I just want to jump back to the assets view to show off something pretty cool. If we take a closer look at the data, if I move my mouse, I might actually just come back to a smaller section here. I've got things very small when we're looking at that. I'll go 55 to 60. That looks like a pretty good section. So bridges are an interesting asset. We can see that these are, they aren't points, they're line segments. Over here, we can see this project doing a bridge repair, and it lines right up with this bridge. That was actually all done through Geocortex inline, kind of with the magic of like TV cooking. I'm going to show how we got there. So one important thing, if I just come, let's say this is the bridge that I want to set up a project on, this one right here, I can just click on it and get a whole lot more details to confirm that it is exactly the feature that I'm interested in. I can click more info and that'll take me out to the REST endpoint. I can run a query and get more very detailed data, but yeah, we can easily access all the basic information there. But one of the more interesting things we've seen people doing with inline is adding workflows, Geocortex workflows, that they bring in a whole other world of functionality. So we have one configured here on the bridges layer to create a project. So the idea is that this bridge needs some sort of repair, some sort of maintenance, and a couple things need to happen. We want to create a project feature to track the progress, and we need to create service request features for each adjacent tax parcel for notifications or whatever it might be. So if I right click on this bridge, I have an ability to create a project. Now, the workflow takes care of the rest. We now have a buffered section of this highway that creates a project feature, and it's going through and it gives me this form to put in some information. I'm going to say my name. We need some repairs, call it medium priority. I can also set how big this buffer is to make sure that, maybe if it's a concern about sound, I need to do 300 feet. Maybe if it's just a concern about debris flying, I only need to come back to 100 feet or something. We can set all these variables and then create our project. And what that's going to do is lock in that polygon, and it also creates a service request for each adjacent tax parcel. Now, those might be for notifying the owners about construction, just letting them voice their opinions, that sort of thing. or they might be like environmental inspections for conservation officers looking for certain rare bird species nesting on these properties. There's a ton of possibilities. And they might not apply to your situation. Maybe the mailing labels probably apply for a lot of people, but whatever linear assets you're looking at, whatever sort of inspections or notifications you need to do, hopefully this is enough that you can kind of imagine how these dynamic diagrams in inline combined with Geocortex workflow can help you get a job done. It might not be environmental inspections or mailing labels. You might be buffering for culverts to put together a maintenance plan, or you might be buffering for downstream things to try and take care of flooding when the culverts are not doing their job, or routes for traffic, figuring out where more lanes need to be introduced or where safety concerns need to be taken into consideration. The idea is the same in every case. Inline just gives you more power to work with your linear assets as part of your GIS, and just different ways to look at things, more visibility, simplifying management. With Geocortex workflow, that's really where it gets cool. Now, over here, I've got one that I want to show quickly. This is an FHWA damage inspection report. So this is a workflow over here in a web app builder application. It starts out with me picking this disaster site, and I've got a bunch of reports here. I can create a new one. I'm just going to quickly show one of these already existing ones though. I'll click edit, and we can see all the values that have already been set when someone created this new. A lot of this comes automatically. The report number is generated just as the next one. If I were to create a new, it would just be 005. This comes in dynamically. This comes in dynamically. The location comes in dynamically, the state, the county. These are set to defaults that can then be changed for who is actually taking care of this damage repair. We can put in some notes. We can say what needs to happen. Where it gets really interesting though is these cost calculations. So when it comes to asking FHWA for some emergency repair funding, they need a report that looks something like this. I think people on this call are probably familiar with it. Often I need to explain it, but this form can be a real pain to fill out, as we've learned from some of our customers. So instead, there's this workflow, and I can pick each category and get all of the different line items that fall into that category. These aren't just text. I can set the cost if I want. Maybe these are $46 for an approach slab replacement, and I need 4 of them. I need some slope and ditch paving, about 50 units of that. And you'll notice these calculations happening on the fly. Once I have everything sorted the way that I like, we can come down and provide a right-of-way estimate. When I say next, it gives us all the tallies. I get to choose if it's a draft or completed, which determines whether or not it can be edited in the future. And once I hit save, this is going to compile all that, and it actually goes out and creates a new feature that contains all of that data as attributes, and it's going to give me the opportunity to get a PDF pre-populated with all of the data, all of the selections that I've just made, and this is pixel perfect, ready to be sent to FHWA. They scan it in their system, and they don't write back and say, hey, that doesn't match our scanner, please do it again. It needs to be exactly like this, with these borders, with this exact shape. So really nice, simple way to fill these out without having to come in and manually do it all and remember what line items are available and type in all of these values manually. You saw it took me, I mean, if I'm doing it all from scratch, it takes a couple more minutes, but the idea is that it's just automating so much of the work of creating these reports for my end users who, probably have better things to do with their time. The report could be anything. There's a lot of different applications for Geocortex reporting, but that's just a good demonstration of how Geocortex workflow and Geocortex reporting work together to solve a business use case that used to be very time consuming. Now it's just a few minutes each time it needs to be done. I don't know where we ended up with timing. How am I doing here? Do I have more time? Are we wanting to jump into Q&A now? I don't want to go too long here, Jeremy.
We've done about 30 minutes. I mean, I guess we could start the Q&A now. Kyla, do you have any questions on the panel yet?
I don't see any questions that came in, so if you put them in there and we're not seeing them, feel free to put those in the chat box in addition, or I think you should be able to unmute if people want to jump in and ask questions as well.
Hey, Aaron, I had one last slide to present, and that was just basically how to contact us and the services or the ways to learn more about Geocortex.
Sure.
Okay, while we're waiting for questions to come in, we've got several ways to learn more about Geocortex through our Geocortex community. Some of these are going to be for our actual users only. Others will be open to everybody. Our community, I think, might be just for our users, that they're able to share their experiences and ask questions, and I think a lot more than that. I've never used it before, actually, because I'm not really an actual user of the technology as much as mainly marketing and sales. So also the documentation center. We have a great documentation center with every release that Geocortex Inline is a full product, fully supported with our technical support. It has got a life cycle. In the past, it wasn't a really fully productized offering. It now is. So that includes, technical support and new releases on a regular schedule based on user feedback and a roadmap, which we do present on a regular basis to our customers. Also the developer center, I think that's really for people who are going to go deeper into the technology. And if you're like just basically, well, what is Geocortex all about? I recommend the YouTube channel. We've got weekly videos are posted on all aspects of Geocortex technology. So I recommend that for sure. And then finally, you can start a free trial on any of our technology, including Inline. So if that's something that you're interested in, please do that. We will also, we're also available to do a deeper dive. I mean, 30 minutes is, a good amount of time, but we can do a much deeper dive into any of our technologies, including Inline, that can support you as you, make your decision on where you want to go with technology. Are there any new questions coming in at all?
I have a question for you. When you have a new client come in, how many of these already have some sort of straight line diagram viewer in place, or how many of them are just looking for the technology for the first time?
Okay, so we have 9 products altogether, and Inline is one of them. We get all kinds of requests. When someone does start a trial, we do get notified and we reach out to see how we can help them in any way. And in the past and currently, we do proof of concepts to support, how is this going to work in my environment? Everybody's environment is slightly different with different workflows, different processes, and the software has got to really fit well. So, we do support, free proof of concepts if it's something that you're serious about. I don't know if that answers the question or not.
Just to kind of extend on that, there's definitely, we see people who do have custom solutions. Generally, they're coming and looking at Inline as kind of taking it to the next level. We haven't seen anything that is in the same vein as Geocortex Inline. The dynamic straight line diagrams that we've seen, they work on the same sort of LRS data, but just not quite the same type of functionality that Inline gets. You get the interaction with the map and the diagram, but not the full suite of functionality.
Also, the secret sauce of workflow, I mean, that really extends it way beyond just Inline, connecting to your data, no matter what the data source is. Also, integrating with, say, for example, Maximo, if that's where your work orders live, we could create a workflow that, generates the workflow or generates that the service request work order inspection as required, just similar to how the project would be created. And also the ability to reduce the amount of repeated data entry, I think is kind of critical too, because we can generate a direction of where the data should go after every interaction. So we can really, customize the application to fit your exact requirements and your environment.
Great. We have a few questions that came in, so I can read those off here. We have a question about when will the query and filter functionality be back in the web portal? Those tools are really missed.
In Geocortex web, I'm guessing is the question there. Comparing Geocortex Viewer for HTML5 to Geocortex web. If you can unmute, feel free to clarify. But filtering and querying in Geocortex web, it's really easy to do with Geocortex workflow. We've actually got templates to make it all possible. Even editing features is now a workflow template where you just specify the layer you want to edit, what fields you want to have available, and it all comes kind of out the back end as it's supposed to. I don't think there are any plans to introduce it as native functionality in web, because with workflow, it makes it so you can take that same functionality, plug it into a web app, plug it into a Geocortex mobile app, plug it into a web app builder app, and just release the same functionality to that many more users. But certainly possible today with workflow templates.
Great. And then one more, is inline mobile now?
Not yet, not yet. We are starting to get some requests for it. So our products R&D team is playing around with it, looking at some proofs of concept. The real trick is taking it offline. There's a ton of data that can be pulled in, and just trying to create a solution where people can go offline and the scope will match however much data someone might have. We've seen some immense amounts of data, and putting that into an inline viewer on a smaller device, taking it offline, there's some obstacles, but yeah, we are certainly looking at it now. I don't know if you know more about that than I do, Peter, but that's what I know so far.
No, I'm not really familiar with the mobile project for inline currently.
Yeah, in the works, but not available quite yet. Still a few kinks to work out. Make sure that it's going to work for everybody.
Great. I think those are the questions that we had come in through the question box. Any final questions for everyone before we switch over to the next presentation?
Thanks for watching.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Peter and Aaron. Okay,
Thank
well,
you.
we will move on to the next presentation. Our next presenters are Jose Simo and Mitch Stevens, and they will be presenting we will look at Massachusetts DOT's implementation of the STIP manager to automate the federally mandated state transportation improvement program, or STIP success. Jose has worked for the Massachusetts Department of Transportation for the past 23 years. Most of his career was focused around data analysis and programs development. For the past 6 years, Jose has served as the Massachusetts DOT GIS Outreach Coordinator. In this role, he has worked on strategic planning within the organization, as well with municipalities to further the integration of GIS into all business workflows. This includes the development of the Mass DOT Transportation Asset Management Plan and Capital Investment Plan. Also presenting is Mitch Stevens. Mitch currently resides in Cumming, Georgia, and has over 30 years experience in the transportation industry, with 8 of those years working for both Florida and Tennessee DOTs. He is currently the Vice President for Professional Services with PMG Software Professionals, where he is responsible for account and project management. And without any further ado, I'll get them started. All right, Jose, I can, yep, there we go.
Okay, now you can hear me also?
Yep.
Great, awesome. Okay, so let me just see if I can put my list up in a presentation mode. Okay, great. All right, so yes, thank you. So Jose Simo, Mazda GIS Outreach Coordinator. Thank you so much for the invitation to share with you what Mazda has been up to in the use of GIS when it comes to funding strategies. And so really my role today is really just to usher in a great speaker who will speak to you about a great application that has transformed the way we manage and even think about our funding resources. So I also would like to, whoops, sorry. I also would like to provide a context of how this application actually fits into the larger goals of MassDOT. So I will be speaking to you about, familiar disciplines like capital investment plans, right? So most DOTs are required to do this. I'll speak to you about the goals of specific to MassDOT. I'll speak to you about program sizes and what that means. I'll share with you what the GIS tools that we're using to reach those goals. And I'll also reveal the missing link at the end of the slides. So yeah, the capital investment plan. So again, most of us need to do this. And so the mission for most DOTs, sounds something like this: like we're responsible for managing the transportation assets that allow the state's economy and its people to flourish. So for that, we need to plan, we need to fund, we need to design, we need to construct, and of course, maintain our capital. So this is what our pyramid looks like. So we start with the strategic plans and the regional planning. We follow our policy goals and strategies. We build more plans and studies. We took the performance-based planning, by the way. And then we also need to sort of worry about the financial constraints resulting in a CIP, right? And so we're guided by our investment priorities, right? So we need to keep our road network, reliable. We need to modernize it when it was appropriate. And we also, I intend to expand it. So based on those priorities, that's what goes first, right? So then the different divisions are actually, required to build these programs that will go in line with these goals. And once they do that, then that results in an actual list of projects that it's really, brings that to reality, right? And so, of course, these programs, need to be sliced up. So, we begin to focus on our reliability, on the harmonization programs. We also need a tool that'll help us to project our performance. Of course, we need to really rely on our data, for a better asset management plan. We need to get together and figure out, okay, so what are the real needs that actually takes us there a lot faster? We also need to be guided by our board. And also, again, we need to worry about fiscal constraints. And so up to now, right, what I've spoken about is like our goals, and I've spoken about program sizes. I've spoken about like how do we figure this out? But at the end of the day, isn't it about the projects, right? The projects is actually that brings these goals, to fruition, right? And so that leads me to this, to introduce you to our, a little bit about us. This is our GIS platform. As you can probably imagine, this is based on our RGS online technology. So, we're a group of about 10 team members, and we produce GIS data to acquire federal funding through the HBMS, as you should probably imagine, right? And so again, it's all about the projects, right? So, prior to us getting involved, our legacy project management system called Project Info, it was a great, robust project management system, right? So it tells you all about a project, except it was lacking the spatial component. So that's where we come in. So it was really, really difficult for, the different divisions to sit down on a room and try to figure out, how are we going to do this? And because we didn't have a frame of reference to have, where are these projects and how did we do last year and that kind of stuff. So then we involved, and this leads me to share with this application. So this is how we went ahead and helped all these divisions to try to figure out what was going on with their projects. So this particular application has allowed us to really, really, think differently and totally change the way we manage our projects. But not only manage them, but also how we choose them. So again, you got all these projects, and so to make a better sense of what do we need to do. So the application comes in and presents to you a menu of different workflows. And this happened because at the very beginning, when we decided to work with this application, we realized that the power of being able to use data and answer questions automatically really, really brought the attention to all the divisions. So we ended up doing this not just for one division, but for others. But also we got involved with different workflows that have to do with the municipalities as well. So these different workflows right here, for example, it allows you to go into this application and do a basic project screening, is what we call. So that's how we started doing that. So what that means is you go into this application, put in your basic information, and then all kinds of data behind the map helps you to realize, hey, does my project have merit on this, or what else do we need in order to get this project going, right? And then you have the local aid that has a whole bunch of different applications, both, built into one. Right, so how does it work? So you come into, again, you put in the basic information, and then you actually, draw where your project is going to be, sort of like sketch, roughly about where you are. And then the application goes to work. It uses about maybe over 70 plus layers of information behind the scenes. And so in order to advance the project in MassDOT, you need to, there's a couple of forms that you need to fill out, right? So the first one is the project need form. Just what it sounds like, show us what the problem is. And then the other one would be the project initiation form, which means, scope, rather, we changed the name to scope. So what that means is like, okay, so we told us what the problem is. Well, how are you going to fix it? So again, like the application comes in, you identify where you are. And what you're looking at over here is all those layers that were used for the analysis. And then the ones that are highlighted in yellow, those are the ones that actually found in the intersection of your sketch. The others that are not highlighted, it actually, use it for the analysis. It just didn't find that intersection. Right? So that leads me to this. So again, now we know how to manage our projects, meaning like where do we find these projects, and how do we make sense of all of this? Okay, but like I said earlier, it's all about the projects, right? And so, okay, now we know where they are, we know how to manage it. Well, how do we fund it? You guessed it, STIP. STIP is the missing link that I was talking about at the very beginning of this presentation. So STIP, this application has allowed us to bring everything together, to marry these two. Like, how do we manage the project? Where do we find it? And then how do we fund it? All right, I'm not going to be able to explain to you exactly how that works. So I'm going to allow Mitch to actually go and explain to you exactly how that works. But again, this has been an incredible journey. Mitch, I'm going to just assign this slide for you, and it's all yours.
Great, thanks, Jose. Appreciate that. And just before I get going, I'd like to introduce Lindsay Gibson as well. Lindsay's on the phone with us from PMG. And Lindsay was with South Carolina DOT for 20-something years, with about 13 years of that involved in managing policies and procedures related to capital highway projects. And she was very integral to the STIP project, which was our first STIP project at PMG, the implementation there in South Carolina. And has also been heavily involved at Massachusetts, and also in the implementation for the Rhode Island Department of Administration and Department of Transportation there. So Lindsay can help with questions as we go through here as well. I am going to forego a demo today, and we're just going to hit some of the highlights via PowerPoint. So just jumping in here, for those of you that don't know, STIP is short for the Statewide Transportation Improvement Program, and it is a federally mandated listing of all of the projects or program areas that receive federal transportation funding. So it sounds pretty simple, right? But it's really not so much. Typically, a DOT STIP requires coordination among many groups and disciplines that work both not only inside the DOT, but outside of that organization as well. In fact, it's required that a STIP is developed in cooperation with MPOs, public transit providers, regional transportation planning organizations in the state, and, just about any organization that's receiving federal funds for these projects. It's really quite a big task and manages quite a lot of money. STIP Manager specifically that we're going to talk about here today is a web-based software solution that allows transportation agencies to really simplify the very complex process by providing transparency into managing that money, as well as automating the workflows to create and amend and report on their STIP and the associated TIPs, which are managed by the MPOs. The STIP Manager application allows you to view all of the budget information all in one place, as well as project funding outlays, in order to balance the needs of the agency with the available funds over the life of the STIP. This also makes reporting quick and easy without the worry of managing multiple spreadsheets. You'd be amazed at how many DOTs have managed billion-dollar work programs out of Excel. Over the next few minutes, I'll just highlight some of the key functions of the application that improve the management of the STIP for MassDOT. Next slide, please, Jose. So the STIP Manager application is built on top of the ArcGIS platform, and it utilizes project LRS information to visualize their planned projects. The system administrators have the ability to configure a map service URL to any published map service to display various layer and attribute data within the application. The features can be turned on and off using the legend, and this allows the users to overlay these different attributes along with the project locations that you can see on the map there. From the map interface, the MassDOT users can change and set the display to highlight specific MPOs or program areas, and project information can be viewed simply by pointing and clicking on one of those points you see on the map. And as Jose said earlier, MassDOT has already done a lot of work to get these projects locations identified. So we're able to build on that foundation that they have in place in order to give them a single authoritative source for their STIP data. Next slide, please. From the Manage menu, the users are able to access the Budget module, which opens the Fiscal Constraint interface. One of the key features of STIP Manager is that it allows the DOTs to manage multiple STIP versions at one time. So, for example, at MassDOT, they continuously maintain two versions of their STIP. They have the active STIP, and also which actually begins in the current fiscal year, and then they are also maintaining a development STIP, which begins in the next fiscal year. So these two STIPs are actually managed completely independent of each other. And STIP Manager keeps historical version, or also keeps historical versions of this STIP for record keeping purposes. So users have the option to view and report on any version at any time. In this fiscal constraint interface, planners are able to monitor constraint by fund sources across the full STIP window. And the fund carryover balances can automatically be calculated from year to year, or the user can actually override that value if needed. The total funds available are married up to the program obligations to provide estimated balances of funds for future planning. Next slide, please. So many of the federal fund sources have a percentage that is sub-allocated to areas in proportion to their share of the state's population. So this meaning that these funds can only be used in those areas. One of the problems MassDOT had was that they were continually having a problem validating and verifying the use of these non-flex funds. And it was actually quite time consuming to go in and perform those calculations. So as part of the implementation we did for them, we included this non-flex functionality that allows the STIP administrator to allocate these funds using spatial data. So as projects are added to the STIP, the LRS information is analyzed to determine if the project is within one of those sub-allocated areas. The system then stores these calculations, allowing a user to see exactly what percentage of each project is within the TMA or that rural boundary. And then planned project amounts can then be distributed using a percentage of the total or a specific dollar amount to ensure that all of the restricted funds can be utilized. Once the modifications have been made, the fiscal constraint information is automatically updated to reflect the new breakdowns. Next slide, please, Jose. Also in the included in the budget module is the ability to budget across priorities and programs. I think Jose also mentioned that MassDOT currently has 3 strategic investment areas to target funding towards. That's reliability, modernization, and expansion. So within these priorities, the DOT has identified specific program areas to help them reach their goals. And the interface you see here provides them the visibility into how they have budgeted and programmed for each of the priorities and program areas. This aligns with the FHWA Transportation Performance Management method that investment decisions should be made based on system information and target setting in order to achieve the set performance goals. Next slide, please. So we kind of move out of the budget area into the projects area now. And the projects module of STIP Manager provides the user the ability to view a project list for any of the STIP versions using various filters. Users are able to see the program funds across the STIP window and any of the variances between the estimated project cost and the current programmed amounts. They also have the ability here to create projects within the application, or they can bring in existing projects from MassDOT's current project system, PINFO, which is the Project Information System, I believe, is what PINFO stands for. So using web services, STIP Manager gives the user the ability to query PINFO system and then create funding scenarios. Then they're able to add those projects directly to the STIP. And we bring over general project information, including the description, the location, estimated project cost, and all that's carried over when the project's added to the STIP. The ability to pull this information versus entering it reduces the time and effort required by both the TIP and program managers when setting up their development project list. It also helps reduce the errors that could be introduced from entering the information in multiple places. Once the STIP is approved, the project information can then be exported for STIP and displayed back in PINFO so that the systems remain in sync with each other. Next slide, please. So for each of the projects, the users can add or modify multiple funding sources and programs to align planned amounts with the project's total estimated cost and schedule. As changes are made, the user can dynamically view the program target variances and use DOT-specific rules to trigger amendments and adjustments to the STIP, the approved STIP. So when users make changes to projects in the approved STIP, the system will, by design, route those changes through a workflow of review and approval process. These pending changes are highlighted for the users. You can see the various colors circled there on the bottom. So the changes are highlighted for the users to easily visualize what stage of the workflow they are in. Next slide, please, Jose. And just real quick on the project history page, you get a full audit trail of the changes that have been made to an approved project. And this can be used to determine where pending changes are in the approval process. And next, please. So the actions module of the STIP Manager application is used to route changes to the STIP through the approval workflow. And this includes submittal to FHWA, and in the case of MassDOT, soon it will be to FTA as well. MassDOT's implementation also included the transmitting relevant changes to each of their 13 MPOs. So MPO users can approve or reject modifications to their TIPs directly through the software. And notifications are automatically triggered for specific events so that users are made aware when changes occur or when actions need approval. And then revision submittals to the two federal agencies are initiated within the application. And those federal partners actually get email requests that include cover letters and revision summaries and the various fiscal constraint reports that are required to approve the revisions. So both FHWA and again soon FTA, when they soon start using STIP Manager as well for MassDOT, are able to approve or reject the changes directly in the system by using a 4-digit encrypted PIN. Next, please. Just to touch a little bit on reports, STIP Manager comes with a selection of pre-formatted standard reports that can be generated in either PDF or Excel format. And in addition to the typical fiscal constraint and STIP investment reports, MassDOT also has a greenhouse gas analysis report that is part of their commitment to reducing greenhouse gas emissions, which contribute to climate change. So each of their projects is evaluated using either quantitative or qualitative factors to determine any reductions or increases in greenhouse gas. And this report helps summarize those findings. Also in STIP Manager, when a standard report isn't enough, there's an advanced reports module or option available to users. And this allows a user to build, execute, and save ad hoc queries against the data that resides in the STIP database. In this advanced report module, users have the ability to define their own criteria, select the output columns they want, and then it's displayed in the report results. The tool actually makes reporting not only quick and easy, but very flexible enough to meet any of the out of the box requests a STIP manager may get. Next, please. And finally, just real quick, there's a system administration module where the STIP manager is actually able to go in and modify the various permissions and code lists and configuration settings and fund mappings that are necessary to manage the day-to-day operation of the software. There are multiple levels of permissions that exist to ensure that users are only able to access the projects which they should be able to edit within the application. So that is a down and dirty, pretty quick overview of what STIP Manager does for MassDOT. You can advance one more if you would, Jose. We've had a very good partnership with MassDOT on this project and are continuing to enhance it as we speak. As I mentioned, we're currently adding, or the initial implementation was for the highways part of the agency, and we are working now to add transit information to STIP Manager. Not to speak for Jose, but I think that he and the team there have been very pleased with the results they've had and how this has helped increase their efficiency in dealing with their STIP process and helped with the capital investment planning as well. So I appreciate everyone's time, and we can entertain any questions you guys may have.
Yeah, I'd like to add something to that, Mitch, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that we're so what this application is able to do is to help us with this STIP, right? But our goal is to actually expand that to actually out to build our CIP, the capital investment plan, which is a much larger, much complicated process, right? So that's what we're like. So this was just sort of like the introduction to, to sort of start dealing with those hurdles that we have in managing our fundings. But we're, planning to expand it, to the CIP. Is that right?
Yeah, that is correct. So I think the next small step is getting the transit data in here, and then the step following that will be the larger overall CIP process will come shortly after that.
Yeah, super excited about all that stuff.
All right, thank you very much, Jose and Mitch. We'll open the panel up to some questions. I have a question in the queue right now. Is the information in GeoDot available to the public?
Absolutely. So most of the layers that are actually, publicly available, it's just, for example, the road inventory file. So we have a map that shows just, the jurisdictions and all of that. So that type of information is readily available to everyone. But then we also have, like, as you know, RGS Online uses, a membership and, different levels of, of usage. So we do that for our internal partners and our divisions and even contractors. We sometimes extend that.
All right, thank you. Another question, how many and what kind of layers are used in MapIt?
Yes, so in that application, as I said before, they really changed the way we even, we actually selected the projects because of, the power of being able to answer those questions. So, but initially it started as, it's a problem with the environmental section where as we started progressing these projects, then was difficult to answer those questions because the data about, environmental was difficult to gather. So it began just as a screening tool. And then, as I say earlier, also I started to, share it with, we started to share it with others, other divisions, say, hey, wait a minute, what about us? That kind of stuff. And that's what, so that would become. So that is to say that ton of environmental layers, and highway information in general, like the crash, the traffic, and all that kind of stuff. So I want to say over 70 to 80 layers, in total goes into play when using that application.
All right, thank you.
No questions in the chat yet. So if you have any questions for Jose or Mitch, please send them in.
All right, well, if there are no other questions, I think that does it for this quarterly webinar. I'd like to thank our presenters again for taking the time to give us some great information about your products. Our next webinar will be on December 1st, 2021. If you're not a part of our webinar invite list, I would ask you please get involved.
We'll do some quick poll questions here too, Jeremy. Do you want to do that
right.
real quick?
Yes.
Okay. We have just 4 short poll questions for everyone here. Just wanting to get a sense of what people are hoping to see for some of our next webinars. So we'll just do these for a few minutes here, just 4 questions, and then we'll wrap up for the day. Thanks for being here. All right, wait for a few more responses on this one, and then we'll switch to the next question. All right, wait for a couple more responses to come in. We'll switch to the next one. All right, thanks everyone. 2 more quick here. So this one will ask what types of upcoming topics you'd like to see, and then the next question will be, is there anything that you're most interested in seeing? So curious to hear some responses on this one from everyone. All right, and then last one. All right, thanks everyone. It's helpful as we plan ahead for some future webinar content. All right, I think that's it for me. Anything else, Jeremy?
That's it. And thanks everybody for your participation. We hope to see you on December 1st, 2021. And have a good afternoon.
Thank you, guys.
All right, see ya.
Thanks everyone.